You're listening to Keeping It 100 with Mel and Bruce, sponsored by the 100 Black Men of Las Vegas. I'm Mel Tillar, your host. And today I'm honored, as always, when this wonderful lady shows up. She's one of my favorite guests of all time. Her name is Representative Dina Titus. Representative Titus, thank you so much for joining us once again.
Well, thank you for having me. And let's tell people that we meet not only on the radio, but out in the community.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. I saw you at the Juneteenth celebration. Great celebration. It was wonderful seeing you in person.
Well, thank you. Likewise.
All right. Listen, we have so many problems happening today in this country. And you're right in the middle of all of them. So from my perspective, it seems to me that our democracy is in great trouble, just tremendous trouble. So what is the greatest threat to our democracy today from where you sit?
Well, I agree with you. I think we are in trouble, and it's hard to just pinpoint one thing. You've got kind of a rogue Supreme Court controlled by 6 super conservatives who are rolling back all our rights. You've got state legislatures around the country trying to fill the void to make it harder to vote, or women's choice, or you name it. And then you've got the commission that's going on looking at the January revolt against our Capitol, and that's turning up so much information about the president, the former president, who was involved. And so all of those 3 things really did come together for a perfect storm, and people should be concerned.
Everybody should be concerned. You talked about Roe versus Wade. Let's talk a little bit about that. How does that decision impact women of color, women in general, and our country as a whole?
Well, you know, the Republicans have been working on this for 50 years.
Yes,
so
they have.
We shouldn't be surprised that they finally got it. And Trump said he was going to appoint anti-Roe justices, and he did. So we shouldn't be surprised from that side either. But if you take away the right to make your own choice, your own health decisions, nobody's saying they want to be for abortion. They just want it to be for a person to make their own choices, a woman.
Yes.
It will affect women of color more than anybody, because often they fall into an economic category where they don't have the resources to maybe go to another state or have the health insurance that might give them the pill that will work the morning after. And so they're going to be stuck with a lack of information, a lack of resources, and you're going to see a return to the coat hanger days. And this will cost lives, and it will be more lives in those underserved minority communities.
Recently, I saw that a 10-year-old child was abused in Ohio, and Ohio would not allow her to get an abortion.
That's right. I mean, can you imagine you're 10 years old, you're traumatized and scared to death, and then you can't even fix part of the problem, the physical part. It's just horrible. It's like government mandated pregnancy is what it comes down to. And so you're going to see more of that. Some of the states have trigger laws where they've already gone into effect that don't allow abortion. Other states are trying to make it illegal to go somewhere to get an abortion, like come to Nevada. That's interfering with our right to travel. We've never had that kind of thing before. And remember, the Supreme Court, and I know you know this because we've talked about it, they are not going to stop at abortion. They say that any kind of constitutional right is now up for consideration. It may be birth control, it may be biracial marriage, it could be voting rights, anything that was not specific in the Constitution that has been granted by the court over the years. They're talking about turning it back. And Clarence Thomas said that specifically in his opinion. This isn't something that I'm extrapolating.
Yes, I saw exactly the same thing. Have we ever seen a court that is targeting the rights of American citizens and letting the American public know which rights they're coming after? Have we ever seen anything like that from the Supreme Court?
Well, not in my time. And if you look back at the history of the court, going back to Brown versus Topeka, usually the court has been one to expand rights, not roll back rights, and not to impose more restrictions. Certainly that's true for voting rights, equality rights. That's another one that they're going after. So we've looked to the court to be the good guys, and now it's just the opposite.
So how is this going to affect our Bill of Rights, our fundamental rights?
Well, those rights are not absolute. Over the years, they've been subject to interpretation. And if you've got a conservative court dominated by 6 people, and remember, they are young, they can stay there for years. This is not something that'll be gone tomorrow. They can interpret those rights very, very narrowly.
We have so many problems. How should communities of color feel when an unarmed 25-year-old African-American, Jalen Walker, was shot 60 times by 8 police officers while running away? And at the same time, a white 21-year-old male, Robert Crimo, killed 7 people, wounded 30 others, used an AR-15, and was apprehended without a scratch. What does that say to communities of color?
I would think they'd be outraged and disappointed and frightened by that. I've heard Aaron Ford talk about having the talk with his sons.
Yes.
And, that's something that's very, very real. I don't need to tell you, you need to tell me. But that's why we've got to have more community cooperation with police departments, more hiring in police departments of people who look like the community that they are involved in, more interaction with community oversight boards. I thought that after the George Floyd situation, we would see an improvement, yes. But apparently that's not the case in some parts of the country. That layer of tolerance or lack of prejudice and all is a very thin veneer. You just scratch it a little bit and it all comes pouring out.
It leaves us all shaking our heads.
Oh, yeah.
So tell us what you've learned from the January 6th investigation, and what is the most surprising revelation to you?
One thing is, I have a lot of respect for my colleagues, and I think that's Democrats and the 2 Republicans who sit on that commission. They haven't been grandstanding. They haven't been stepping on each other's questions. They haven't been trying for the sound bites. They have just very methodically orchestrated this so that they build the case one step at a time. And I think the public respects them for that too. We won't ever win over the real hardcore Trumpers because they're not going to accept it as truth. But those people in the middle have got to be impressed by the things that have come out. You saw the lady who was an elections worker in Atlanta talking about getting harassed and threatened by the administration. I mean, that's the story that hits home to a lot of people. A lot of our seniors volunteer to be election workers. And then the thing that I think is very hard for them to refute is that this isn't Democrats who are coming forth to testify. This isn't critics of the president. This is his own family, his own lawyers, his own administration members. They're the ones who are saying it. So, it must be true, or they wouldn't be turning on the president when he was their guy originally.
Yes. Does the Democratic Party in general feel like this committee is having an impact? Do you all have numbers, data?
We do. People are getting more information. People are tuning into it, and these are long hours, but they're not tedious because so much information comes out. So I think that this appeals to the Democrats to make them energized again, especially now that Trump is talking about running again. He'll make that big announcement this summer that he's saying, so that it energizes Democrats. And I think that it helps to inform and sway some of those nonpartisans who had kind of forgotten why they hated Trump so bad.
Some of the Republicans are saying that if Trump gets another term, that democracy will not survive. Is that your opinion also?
That certainly is my fear. We are now trying to undo some of the things that he did when it came to immigration rights, when it came to environmental things. We probably haven't even found everything that he did while he was there in office. And if you give a Republican president a majority Republican Congress, it just becomes an autocracy instead of a democracy, I believe.
What are our chances of winning the House of Representatives?
It's going to be a slog. They got tons of money right now. They're running $1 million worth of ads on something they've taken out of context, but that's exactly how they operate. I don't think it's going to be as bad, though, as they predicted, because things are happening. Gas prices will go down, the abortion issue, the other things that the Supreme Court's doing in the environmental area and in the voting rights area. I think that it's going to be hard, but if we can get people to hear our message, we're on the right side of history.
What about the Senate? Do we have a chance, the Democrats have a chance of winning the Senate?
We do. I believe that some people think it's easier to keep the Senate than the House, but we've got really good candidates. Catherine Cortez Masto is a great candidate in Nevada. The astronaut Kelly in Arizona is a really good candidate, and they've nominated some real wackos out there. Preacher Warnock in Georgia is out ahead by about 9 points the last I saw. So I think we'll hold it and make some gains.
In West Virginia versus the Environmental Protection Agency, the Supreme Court once again curtailed the ability of the EPA to regulate the energy sector. How does that impact us, and what are some of the far-reaching impacts of that decision?
Well, here's something else that Trump wanted to emasculate the EPA, environmental protection. That's what they're supposed to do, protect the environment, which in turn protects the population. So we tried to undo some of that. Now the Supreme Court's taken it back. If the EPA can't regulate air quality and water quality, they have no job. And those things are things that we have just come to take for granted. If you turn on the tap, you can drink the water. If you go outside, you ought to be able to breathe. But we know that power stations and transportation are the two biggest emitters of air pollution. So if you take away the EPA's ability to regulate the generators and the power companies, those utilities, you know, that's half of the problem right there, that now can just operate with impunity.
So what's happening in Nevada? What are our congressional delegates doing to work with the state of Nevada and improve conditions for Nevadans?
Well, you know, we passed a package of 3 recovery acts and put a lot of money in the state, more money than they've ever seen. 800 million went to the school district alone. Yes. So our governor's just having a field day going around handing out money and taking credit for it. You know, it wouldn't be there if our federal delegation had to pass the bills. Yes. But it's okay, because the things he's doing with it are good things, like the housing program, Home Means Nevada. We know we need affordable housing in Nevada. Yes. And then the most recent one was a program for giving subsidies for childcare. Certainly we need that. People can't go back to work if they can't be sure their children are safe. So if he wants to take credit, that's okay. I'm in agreement with how he's spending it.
Now he's in a tight race with Joe Lombardo. What are his chances of winning?
Oh, I think he will win. I think the North probably isn't going to vote for a Southern sheriff. And Lombardo's been kind of all over the place, with Trump, not with Trump, here or there. All in all, Nevada has come back amazingly from COVID. So I think Steve will get some credit for that.
That's fantastic. I certainly appreciate, as always, you're so generous with your time, but we're starting to run out of time. What are your final words for our listeners?
If ever there was a time to be engaged and to be informed and to be out there on the hustings, including to vote, now is it, because so much is at stake. And it's not being overly dramatic to say our democracy is at stake, because it really is. They'll have plenty of money. We need people on our side.
We greatly appreciate that. What can our listeners do to make a difference?
Well, if they need information about any issue, they can call any of us to get that information. If they need help registering to vote, again, the party can help provide that. Just be engaged and know that we're there to help make that happen.
Thank you so much, Representative Titus. You've been listening to Keeping It 100 with Mel and Bruce. I'm Mel Tillar, your host, and that's Keeping It 100.
Excuse me.